Now, good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and viewers from around the globe. It's my pleasure to welcome you once again to Elombah Television tonight. We are having a very important discussion today. Today is being 30th May. The topic for discussion is the Aburi Accord, facts, fictions, and possibilities. With us tonight are two very knowledgeable guests in this discussion. We have Dr. Tony Nwankwo Nwaezeigwe, who is a historian, a researcher, and has written a lot of articles regarding Biafra and the history of Nigeria. Dr. Nwaezeigwe, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you, Chief Elombah.
I'm not yet Chief. We are also happy to welcome. We are also happy to welcome Dr. Katch Ononuju, Director of the Heritage Center, Abuja, to our discussion tonight. Dr. Ononuju, you are welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
All right. So some of us, we are born during the Nigerian Civil War. People like us were born during the Nigerian Civil War, actually. Some were born a few years before the Nigerian Civil War. And so we are born after the Civil War. Since then, we are hearing about the Aburi Accord, like Ojukwu will say during the war, on Aburi we stand. Let's start with Dr. Nwaezeigwe, please. What is this Aburi Accord all about?
The point is that Aburi Accord is an extended meeting of the Federal Executive Council at Aburi, Ghana, between January 4th and 5th. And the background is founded on the events following the second coup, the counter coup of July 29th, 1966, when the head of state and Supreme Commander, Major General JTU Aguiyi was assassinated. We found that Aguiyi was assassinated with Fajuyi and other people on the morning of 29th June, 29th July 1966 at Ibadan. And between that period, for 4 days, there was no head of state. There was vacuum. It was just on August 1st that Gowon announced the takeover of the government. And when Gowon took over the government, that was after the, when Gowon took over the government, that was after the normal, even at that time, the killing of the Igbo soldiers in Igbo military men in Nigerian armed forces was still going on. When he took over the regime, Ojukwu never recognized him on two grounds. First, at that time, the whereabouts of Aguiyi was not known, because he was declared missing. So as long as he was not known, his whereabouts was not known. It was presumed that he was still the head of state. So to Ojukwu, the attempt by Gowon to claim that that he has taken over power.
I'm live now on television.
Okay, let me allow you. Which are the channels?
Elombah TV.
Sorry?
Dr. Nwaezeigwe, go ahead, please.
Okay. So, first was that the Supreme Commander and Head of State of Nigeria was missing, was presumed. Missing does not mean that he had died, because there was no information. So, Gowon shouldn't have come to say that he was not the head of state. So Ojukwu never agreed. Second point was that if was assumed that Aguiyi was dead, then seniority, military seniority, the framework demands that the next in command, Brigadier Olufemi
Ogundipe also.
Ogundipe Yes. Baba Femi Olundipe or Olufemi, I don't know, but there's Femi there. There's Ogundipe. Who will take over as the next ranking. These were the two reasons Ojukwu adopted that. For that reason, he refused to recognize Gowon. And between that moment down, there was no executive, federal executive council based on these two grounds. And thirdly, based on the chaotic situation in Nigeria, in Nigeria at that time, which also followed the September-October pogrom, followed by September-October pogrom. So there was no ground. All attempts to hold meeting, the Federal Executive Council in which Ojukwu will attend was not possible because of the fear of his safety. It was based on that ground that a British journalist, a British diplomat named Malcolm MacDonald initiated the Aburi Accord and met General Ankara, Lieutenant General Ankara of Ghana, and through Ankara of Ghana and the Inspector General and Ghana Inspector General of Police, Hale, it was now decided that the Federal Executive Council should be met on a neutral ground to discuss the state of affairs. And that neutral ground happened to be Aburi, which is an extended part, a resort, a government, a Ghana government resort somewhere outside Accra. That was how the Aburi meeting came about.
All right, we thank you. Let's move to Dr. Katch Ononuju now. So, Dr. Ononuju, what was the aftermath of the Aburi Accord? What happened there and what decisions were reached?
Well, the Aburi Accord was, if you'd ask me, when we had that after the coup, the constitutional crisis, and when it was decided that they should come to Ghana, and Ankara agreed to host all the people, it was then agreed that since they have lost the availability of order and the politicians who were killed in the coup, that there was not now to do the issue of it. Yes, he harmonized power to the center, but he did not undermine the strength of the federative units. Aburi Accord was simply a meeting to agree on a new term of association that will still allow for the federative units to confederate, for Nigeria to stay as one nation, but the powers to rule will now fall to the federative units. And it was disagreed to. After it was agreed to in Aburi, in Ghana, and when they came here, due to a cascade of advices, go and say he got, some told him he had negotiated with the kitchen. How to agree to share power when already they commit that you have all the power? And the one thing led to the other, and the East said, no, on Aburi we stand. On Aburi we stand meant on the agreements reached in Ghana, we will agree to go forward in the Nigerian project. And I think at that time, there were officers from the North who were also saying they want to go away, that they will leave the country. But I think the British were their trick, and what they simply wanted to do was to maintain control of the units that they thought they owned, which was the Nigeria, which honestly, the British created Nigeria. Before they created Nigeria, it was a cascade of different communities. Up north was known as the Sudan, before the British changed it from Sudan to what you now call the Northern Protectorate. That's why still today in northern Nigeria, people take chieftaincy titles in Hausa, where they will call you Sarkin Wuruno Sudan. That means the Eze Wuruno in the Sudan. Even till today, the TV still have a Christian denomination, which went from the Sudanese Imperial Mission toward the TV called Lengu Christian, Al Sudan Hentiv, the people of Christ in Sudan of Tiv origin. So when the amalgamation now changed the name of that Sudan area into what you know today as Northern Nigeria, and the areas where we come from into what you call Southern Nigeria. And then the amalgamation came. It was still a British territory. It was still Britain trying to manage, even though the British had left Nigeria, because historically we in the entire Nigerian space, we were colonized twice by the Fulani over the Hausa states. And of course, you had in the Igbo area what you had, the Aro Confederacy, which was a cascade of Aro business entities, but working together. And of course, in the Yoruba areas, you had, after the weakening and the end of the Benin Empire, the rise of Oyomesi. And up north, you then had different things that what the Fulani had, which they called earlier, their Sokoto Caliphate. Of course, the Fulanis came from Sudan. They were rejected as they came into Africa by the Kanuri in Borno. They were rejected by the Mande in Fota Toro and the Wolof. They were also rejected by the Mandinka in Fota Jalon, forcing them to come back to Hausa land. And when the Hausas allowed them to stay in a place called Gober, they stayed there pretentiously. When they had the time, they attacked Gober, seized Gober, and renamed it Sokoto. And that's why now that we're back as a democracy, the Fulani do not have the numbers to continue to hold on to the advantage which they have had from the days of the British, passing on to the days of the military dictatorship before now we're a democracy. So in principle, the Aburi Accord was on the agreements in Ghana. When the Igbo said on Aburi we stand, they meant on the agreements of the new terms of association agreed to in Ghana. That is what we will stand. So when we now, today's Nigerians, we became a democracy, as they would say. And then I turned out that after the Civil War, the Fulanis kind of had an advantage over the North, because when the British left, it was still the Fulani. The British, don't forget, after defeating Sultan Atahiru in Gombe, killing him there by Captain Moloney. Yes, though Captain Moloney was later killed in Kefi by Mekaswa, whom the British pursued to Kano, caught him there and executed him. The
Okay,
British
sorry, Dr. Ononuju, I think to encapsulate what you are saying, who are to blame for the failure of the agreement reached at Aburi? Let's listen to Dr. Nwaezeigwe and then we come back to you on this point, because it appears both of you agree that there were agreements reached at Aburi which may have saved Nigeria from going into civil war. So if it failed, who we are really to blame for that failure? Dr. Nwaezeigwe, what do you have to say?
First of all, let me correct the impression of the objectives of Aburi. Aburi, the meeting of Aburi, the objective was not to create confederation. The Aburi went with 3 major items on the agenda. Yes. First, to look at the indiscipline in the army and arising conflict and crisis and put it in order. Secondly, to find a way of evolving a responsible administration in the country. And thirdly, to tackle realistically the problems of displaced persons, Igbo refugees, who left their property and some of them killed, those who survived. These are the 3 major items on the agenda. The issue of confederation and so on and so forth, was just an outcome from this agenda. And in fact, at the end of the meeting, they come up with 6 points. First, and this is where people at times trying to overblow the issue of confederation, because we should understand that it was the military, was in charge. At that time, the civilians have all gone underground. So the government was military. The Federal Executive Council was made up of the Supreme Commander, the 4 military governors, and the Attorney General. These were just the members of members of Federal Executive Council. And these were the people who went there. At that time, Fajuyi had died, and then Adebayo was appointed to replace him. Ejo was there. Mobolaji Johnson, as administrator of Lagos, was there. Usman Kastina was there. These were the main people. Then he had other undersecretaries. Secretaries like the Akins were later Oba Benin, was undersecretary of permanent undersecretary who represented the federal administration. And then the other secretary to the regional government, like Apan, who was secretary of Eastern Nigeria. And then Ali Akilu and other people, and the other two who represented the other regions. So it was purely a Federal Executive Council meeting. It was not an arrangement. It has no objective of creating a confederation. And at the end of the day, they reached at 6 points. First, that the army, remember, the army was once under the command of the Supreme Commander. Now, number one agreement was that the army should now be under the command of the Supreme Military Council. Remember, there are difference between Supreme Military Council and the Supreme Commander. Under Aguirre, the army was under Supreme Commander, so he has sole authority to fire, appoint, and post and promote. But when the point decided, because that was Ojukwu's point, now the army has to be under the council, which means all the governors are in charge of the army, no longer the Supreme Commander. And then they should now have establishment of that. That was number one. The number 2 point of agreement was that they now have to establish a military headquarters in which all the 4 regions and Lagos should have equal representation in the military council. Then, thirdly, they have to create area commands corresponding to the 4 regions, of the federation, in which each ethnic group have to manage the affairs of the command. These are the third one. The fourth one, matters of promotions and executive position of the armed forces should now be dealt with the Supreme Military Council. So collectively, in the command, Supreme Military Council will now decide promotion and appointment. They now, during the military period, during that interim, the military governors of each state who should be in charge of the army for internal, for maintenance of internal peace and security. So each zonal command should be under the military governor, respectively. Then fourth was the creation of Lagos garrison. Now, because at that time Lagos was a federal territory, so the point is that Lagos should now be what? A federal. That was how the Lagos garrison came about, to be a neutral point which can now moderate the activities of the regional military forces. So the idea of confederation arose from the creation of this military, from the creation of this zonal commands. It has nothing to do with government. These are the decision, the 6-point decision they took. So because it was under military rule and the commands were to be under military government, it was not defined, it was not interpreted to be what? To be yet a confederation. And why? When Gowon got back, Gowon was advised that he cannot accept that idea of the military, the Supreme Military Council, taking charge of the military command. He decided to declare so that he has to be in charge, just as Aguirre had done. That was one of the problems that Ojukwu rejected. Let me stop there first.
Okay, so we thank you very much for this expose. Dr. Ononuju, so now, who do we blame for the failure to implement the agreements reached at Aburi, Ghana?
We will blame Gowon because Gowon has the post of head of state. So he was president of Nigeria. And if he agreed to a set of, agreements in Accra, Ghana, he could not come back here to now suddenly say he's seeking other opinions. I don't buy those who want to shift the blame to Oba Kenzoa, Mr. Asiodu, and the other super permanent secretaries, as they were called. Those were just things that those people who are controlling Gowon wanted to play up to say he didn't do it. No, Gowon was wrong. Gowon pretended to be in charge, but of course, from what we saw in his backing out of that agreement simply meant if he was to be believed, then he's not in charge. If it is not to be believed, it simply plays to what we have agreed to. Well, if you also ask me in any way, other ways, I will tell you, Gowon was simply the head of a collective that ran the head of state because one, Gowon was Angas, a minority ethnicity in Plateau State. And being Angas, he didn't have the strength and the push that the Fulani had. He didn't have the strength that the Nupe had, or that the Kanuri had, or the TV or the Bachama, because if you look at the composition of the Northerners who joined the army, the largest of them at the onset of the Civil War were from Benue Plateau State, primarily today's Benue State, TV. After the TV, that was followed by the Bachama from Newman in our state. So Gowon is from Angas and a very small minority. And the way it was then, he was seen to be just a figurehead, and those who controlled the outcomes and the events were simply behind him. But then, if history wants to say, history will say Gowon was primarily guilty. Why did you allow yourself to be used as a figurehead?
All right,
why would you allow yourself?
Sorry, if you pardon me, Dr. Ononuju, let me ask both of you direct questions, because the topic of this question is the Aburi Accord, facts, fictions, and possibilities. So part of the things we were told about why Aburi Accord failed was that Gowon come back, the British called him, and the British impelled him not to accept the agreements of the Aburi Accord. Fact or fiction? First, Dr. Ononuju, fact or fiction?
Gowon, those were stories of what we were told. I blame Gowon. I don't want to relay my things to. That's why I told you he was just a figurehead. And there were quite a lot of people who were behind the curtain calling the shots. So since he had made himself available as the leader of that government that was controlled by people behind the scene, Gowon was, yes, the head of that triumvirate that included both the British, the Fulani, and then who were able now to get all other people to fall in line. And they all went against the Aburi understandings, which today, 50 years after the Civil War, all of them are suddenly calling for those Aburi understandings to be brought back as restructuring, which means devolution of powers to the federative units.
All right, okay. Dr. Nwaezeigwe, fact or fiction? That Britain, sorry?
It's a fiction. The British ambassador only intervened immediately after the coup when the Northerners were shouting Araba, and In fact, Murtala led coalition wanted to secede. That was when the British intervened. But looking at why Gowon renegates at the Aburi Accord, it's not. It's multifarious.
I will come to that.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I will ask this question in a short while. Now, another popular story was that I read an article by Oba Akenzua, although Dr. Ononuju made reference to it a few minutes ago.
Yes.
The super PAMSECs, as they were called, Gowon came back.
Yeah.
They sat down to look at the agreements and told Gowon. Oba Akenzua particularly claimed the credit that it was he who now called Gowon and say, don't agree to these recommendations because it will whittle down the powers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Dr. Ononuju, yeah, Dr. Ononuju, fact or fiction?
Fiction, because Akenzua was only used to paint a picture like it was Southerners who do not want to agree to the terms of the Aburi agreement. Those were simply what they used them to do. So I call it fiction. The reasons why the Aburi Accord failed was because Gowon was weak and he reneged on those things. Historically, it would be foolish for us to start blaming people who are beneath Gowon. So who is a PAMSEC to what Gowon had negotiated as the head of state? A PAMSEC is nobody. He was just used to play those stories to paint to the South Sea. It is Southerners who are permanent secretaries who said no. What kind of story is this? At the time Gowon went to Aburi, Gowon was head of state. He's not a child. This is a fully grown man. So whatever a fully grown man signs onto, when he comes back home, he does implement it. Take a look at today. Who is a PAMSEC in Nigeria to tell President Buhari or any other president what to do? You know, that just preposterous talk. It doesn't really make sense. When a man doesn't want to do something he should do, he can always cite all sorts of advices as reasons why he reneged and did the wrong thing.
All right, well, thank you very much. Dr. Nwaezeigwe, sorry. Fact or fiction? The PAMSECs. Okay.
Yes, please. It is a fiction. Let me explain about this fact of, you didn't allow me to conclude the other time. It will not serve our viewers the benefit of being here. First of all, Akenzua, apart from Omobare, who came there as attorney to advise them, Akenzua was the most senior civil servant from the federal government. I attended the Aburi, so he was in the Aburi. So the issue of Gowon coming back and Akenzua calling him was false. First of all, Aburi failed for certain reasons. For certain reasons that even started before the accord. Before the accord, it was doomed to failure. First of all, if you look at the constitutional, you are talking of a regional commands in which the Fulani led the northern Nigeria, led by a Fulani, Usman Kasina, will now decide. You are talking of the eastern region, where the Igbo led Ojukwu will decide the fate of the people. It will not work, given the antecedent before that time. Remember, there was constitutional conference that lasted from September. In that constitutional conference, the issue of creation of states, creation of state was there. So the point is, Gowon and his people, Gowon and his people have been agitating for state creation. Middle Belt states, they've been agitating it right from the London Conference of 1953. Then you look at the Willings Commission of 1958. They've been agitating for what? For their own states. The core, Cross River, Ogoja, and River provinces of Eastern Nigeria, have been agitating for their own states. And these people who did not want to be subjected again under the domination of the domination of the majority ethnic groups. Gowon, the Middle Belters saw the appearance of as the only opportunity they have to liberate themselves from the Hausa Fulani oligarchy. And that was why they rejected the Araba in the first instance, because going north means putting themselves at the mercy of the Hausa Fulani. And the creation of state, and they've already put off the Constitutional Conference and already decided the number of states that will be created. Gowon proposed 14. It was Midwest region that proposed 12. So the issue is that these people did not want that into work because they wanted their own states. It was not a question of Akinzwe telling this person, Akinzwe. It was obvious. These people went and told the permanent secretary. Akinzwe was one of the people, the minorities from South, went and met and said, look, we are not going to be part of this Aburi Accord because we wanted our own state. The two people in particular, team group, who actually suffered under Ahmadu Bello infractions, demanded that they needed their state by fire, by force. And remember, they were the people who actually put Gowon in power, on power under Colonel Akaha. So these were the points that led Gowon to say, look, that idea of military command, he no longer agreed to it. That idea of Supreme Council, he no longer agreed to it. So it was a question of disorganizing the state military command. It was not all about administration.
Right. Well, thank you. Let's allow you to take a breath. Dr. Nwaezeigwe will allow you to take a breath. Let's hear from Dr. Ononuju on another point, if he's still right. Dr. Ononuju, so both of you are agreed that let's not blame the British government, let's not blame the permanent secretary, although Dr. Nwaezeigwe have now gone further to say these are some historical antecedents that made Gowon to reject the Aburi Accord. My next question will be, on your own part, why do you think Gowon rejected the Aburi Accord if he's solely to blame? Although we have had Dr. Nwaezeigwe's exposition, but we would also like to hear from you.
Well, I think Gowon rejected the Aburi Accord because when he came back here, there was pressure upon him based on the advice from the British that they don't have to, one, do what the officers who were asking Araba. Araba means in Hausa, divide. You don't need to divide it. You can hold all of it and we will help you, guide you. If it's a war, we will find finances. And that was why you saw when the war actually came. There was money from Russia, the USA, United Kingdom, and everybody who could have been on a divide. So I could also say we went into it without having our diplomacy properly done. I will primarily say Gowon was a figurehead, that's one. Two, it's available today, it's very clear today. He wasn't a man of really strong character. I believe he wasn't the last. We've seen other presidents of Nigeria who were also being misled, who weren't of very strong character, who were naive. I blame Gowon for everything. I don't want to shift blame to anywhere. I blame him, he was weak. And when you have a man who is weak at the head of the class suffers. So the country suffered then, and I believe today Gowon suffers because if you look at when the Fulani started their new quest to seize ancestral land, they started in Gowon's state. They started with the TV's Benue state. They started with the Bachamas Newman in Adamawa state. And that's why it's really good for a man to read deeper than what he learned in the classrooms. I believe the people of today's Middle Belt, they regret having sided the Fulani. And that reminds me, there is nothing like Hausa Fulani, it doesn't exist. Because the Hausas are distinct from the Fulani. The Hausas are indigenous to Nigeria. The Fulani are not. The Fulani came from Yemen, and they do not have any history of being at peace anywhere with Africans. So we were, as I was trying to say earlier, they came in here after the Portuguese came in here and the British came. They were the last to come. But at independence, the British left and they stayed behind. And that's because they don't have numbers. So theirs was simply using deceit to pretend to the people, you know, we are Muslims like you, so they're not, we're Northerners. But at the end of the day, they now decided to undermine everybody in the North. And that's why people in the North now regret ever agreeing with the Fulani to go against the Igbo. And that's what I was saying. We didn't have enough propagation to get people to understand what the problem was that some of the Igbos saw, because nothing really has changed. You know, despite their having the majority game, which the British helped to actually bring about, they still were not very satisfied. They were always scheming to undermine everybody. Remember, it was them, the Fulani, who spearheaded the crisis in the western part of the country, and the West went into what we historically called retier. It's not stopped, and that's why we are right now where we are, a Fulani-induced insecurity across Nigeria, which pits the indigenous people against the Fulanis. Today, nothing has changed.
Yeah, we thank you. We will come to some of these points in the course of this discussion. Let me ask the final question about stories before we now go to the consequences of the failure of the Aburi Accord. My next question will be that we also read that Gowon blamed Ojukwu for the failure of the Aburi Accord because he said Ojukwu released the agreement of the Aburi Accord without his, in other words, Gowon is saying, we agreed at Aburi that when we come back to Nigeria, I will address Nigerians on what was reached at Aburi. And now here you now come to Nigeria, release the statement about the conclusions of Aburi without allowing me to make that declaration first. Dr. Nwaezeigwe, fact or fiction?
Well, that is Gowon's view because obviously in that Aburi Accord, remember that it was during that Aburi that that Ojukwu was formally briefed about Aguiyi-Ironsi's death, and then it was agreed that Aguiyi-Ironsi and Fajuyi should be given a hero, normal official area. That was when Ojukwu based on what they agreed. Tell the fact that Gowon should lead. It was not appropriate for Ojukwu to have come because Ojukwu came back. The Aburi Accord was 4th and 5th of January 1967, and on 6th January 1967, Ojukwu gave a press conference. I think the Gowon was right because Ojukwu shouldn't have gone, but that was not actually the reason why the Aburi failed. And I've told you that historically, when I'm talking as a professional historian, you don't use one factor to determine the course of events. It's just like what is happening in Nigeria today. You don't say, oh, it is because of Fulani herdsmen that Nigeria is disintegrating. But there are multifarious factors that bring about the rise and fall of any empire. And that is what we are witnessing. So when you are talking about Abuja, Aburi Accord, you don't keep it on one, you don't peg it on one person that it is because of this press conference that is failed. No. And I've narrated the reasons that even Ruth First, a prominent historian, African historian on Nigerian Civil War, clearly said that Aburi Accord was vague and ambiguous paper over conflicting purposes. So, right, if you take a look at the content of the Aburi Accord, you find that it is impracticable because of the serious underground, serious prevailing circumstances in the country. I've said it that even up to today, you are talking of going back to Aburi Accord, going back to Aburi Accord, confederation. The South will not like to subject themselves under the Southeast today. The Middle Belt will not allow themselves to be subjected under the Upper North today. That was the situation in Aburi Accord. So it's not a question of blaming one or blaming one person. The political demography at the time made Aburi Accord impossible to operate.
All right. All right. So, Dr. Ononuju, do we now say that the failure to implement the resolutions at Aburi led to the Biafran War? What do you think? What do you think are the direct consequences of the failure to implement the agreement reached at Aburi?
The direct consequences was the war, because Aburi was a stopgap strategy to stop the slide. But don't forget, the reasons why the Igbos left all parts of the country was to run into a safe haven where the killing would not continue. If you understand, we have different worldviews. We believe in live and let live as Igbos. The Fulani don't believe that. The Fulani believe in spilling blood as a strategy to seize territories and land. They did that to the Hausas. So the behavior in the north, which was instigated by them against Igbo, was in line with their history of violence. They have never had a history of living peacefully with any group in Africa since they came into Africa from Yemen through Ethiopian border. So that's their way. And as they continued that violence, the Igbos ran out of the east, out of the north, came to the east. Aburi was simply a stopgap to stop it. And in stopping it, what do we do? And then a set of recommendations were reached. So yes, Gowon is right that Ojukwu came and Ojukwu published what was agreed in Ghana, which is normal. If a man leads a group, he goes on an errand on behalf of that group. When he comes back, in line with the Igbo tradition of relaying back to Umunade what it is that you have gotten from the message the Umunade sends you. Don't forget, our system is built on the Umunade institution. As he came back, he now relayed that news to Umunade. This is what it is that I have brought from the message you people sent me, or that I went on your behalf in Aburi. This is it. No, what Gowon wanted to was to come back to Nigeria and then start a new set of negotiations. That's not what it is. Aburi had negotiated, Aburi had signed the agreement, Aburi had agreed on those agreements. So coming back to Nigeria was to implement. So what Ojukwu did was he published it, Gowon would then publish his own, and they would then sit down and set up a committee to implement in line with the agreed accords and its selling points from Aburi. Not to come back to Nigeria and start all over, as Gowon envisaged, to start a renegotiation. Now, this is the problem everywhere you see. It's one thing to negotiate peace agreements. The hardest part of it, as you've seen in the United Kingdom, with the Good Friday Agreement, and of course in Mali, with the agreement in Mali, is implementation. Implementation of agreements is very difficult with human beings. And because of the inability to implement the Malian agreement, that's why you're seeing the influx, the outflow of refugees from Mali and influx of them into Nigeria. And because they've come in here, they now have exacted their own pressure on our population, on our demographics. And what you have now is them trying to commit to ethnic cleansing as a strategy to gain land. And that's why you see the southern governors have told the Buhari administration that they will not agree to an inch of a southern land being ceded to these Marudu refugees whose intention only. And so that just to remind you, the crisis in Nigeria today is about land.
All right,
So
thank you very much.
You really, we can't trust these people.
All right, we thank you. So, Doctor, let's remind our listeners that we are discussing the Aburi Accord, fact, fiction, and possibilities, bearing in mind that this is the period that the Nigerians are kind of remembering the events of 1967 to 1970, which I'm sure everyone here knows about those incidents. Dr. Nwaezeigwe, will you say that the failure to implement the agreement reached at Aburi directly led to the Nigeria Civil War? In other words, would implementing those Aburi agreements have prevented Nigerians from fighting the civil war?
Without even implementing the Aburi Accord, Nigeria should have averted the civil war. Because, as I said, there are many factors that made.
No, sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt you. I think I'm sorry, Dr. Nwaezeigwe, excuse me. Sorry, please, for interrupting you. I will appreciate what you're about to say, but if our listeners will get the answer to this question, remember the thing we are considering. Would you say that the failure to implement the agreements at Aburi directly led to the Nigerian Civil War? Or in other words, would implementing those agreements prevented Nigerians from fighting a civil war? What do you say?
Well, yeah, first of all, I cannot say the failure of that. You see, I am not a scientist. I'm a historian, and I don't just answer questions as if I'm in touch. You are a legal practitioner, true or false. As I said earlier, the Aburi Accord, even without implementation, if Ojukwu had come down, and seen the reason for it, it's not a question of implementation. Aburi Accord was implemented, but with modifications. Gowon distorted a lot and put his own ideas. It's not a question of, when they talk of Aburi, non-implementation, it's not a question of non-implementation. It was implemented, but in a modified form, which Ojukwu rejected. So we must understand that.
Right.
So we are now talking about the modification, not the implementation. Yeah, not implement, because it was implemented, but Gowon changed it to suit himself and the circumstances on the ground. And I said earlier that even if Ojukwu had listened to advice and had come down, even without implementation, even with the modifications, there shouldn't have been any civil war. So part of the civil war based on Ojukwu's personality. And then you can also look at the weakness of Yoruba land, Western Nigeria. At that time, Western Nigeria was weak because militarily, because the garrison in Abeokuta and Ibadan were dominated by Northerners. And that was at that time, Awolowo and others asked the Northern troops to leave, and they moved to Jeba. It was at the outbreak of the Civil War that they were even asked to come back. So if you're even talking about command, because at Aburi, the issue of recruiting soldiers from crash soldiers for West was discussed at Aburi. That since Western region had not enough force, how will they now put people? So it was agreed at Aburi that there should be crash program for recruitment of army of soldiers for the Western region to meet up the standard of that Aburi agreement. And and when they came, because of the situation, there was no time for that recruitment when the crisis set in. So even if the Aburi had been implemented, like it should have generated another form of crisis of rejection by the minorities, both in the north and the east. That's my own position.
All right, well, thank you. I will very soon start taking questions. I'm seeing a lot of hands already on the air wanting to ask questions, but please let's allow Dr. Ononuju to quickly address this question, and then we'll start taking questions from the audience. Dr. Ononuju, what do you think? Directly, will the implementation of the Aburi Accord have prevented Nigerians from fighting a civil war?
Yes, because that was an agreement. If they had agreed and implemented that accord as it was agreed to in Ghana, when you start saying you implement with modifications, a single modification is enough to throw away the full meaning and import to a people who were being killed of the meaning and the interpretation of their fears. Don't forget, you were talking about a period when people were being slaughtered and people were running away to their villages. It was agreed in Ghana on a set of rules that will rebuild and reassure people. Confidence building in times when blood has been spilled is a total issue. If now you've seen a man who has been known to kill, And then you now have an agreement of we're going to cross over, and when we cross over, nobody is to be seen with a knife. And then you see somebody with a small penknife on his broad hand. And you know very well this man has killed before. There's nothing anybody will preach to you that you will now agree for him to keep that small penknife on him. Because why? He's been known to kill. So times when blood has been spilled, when you have agreements, it makes sense to stick to it. If you don't, that weather of suspicion, that climate of suspicion, that distrust environment that lingers around will simply make everybody say, no, 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 he's come again. Look, he's come again. That's exactly who he is. So that's the reason why the minute when you start changing things, if the man accepts that thing you've changed, nothing stops you from changing other things tomorrow. Stick to the agreement and then build from that agreement, because the most important thing you need in leadership is trust. If you don't have trust, as it doesn't exist right now in Nigeria for President Buhari, that's not everything you do, nobody will agree with you. It's like when he started on his quest for land and we knew we couldn't trust him, and everything they say, we say, no, 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 no. The reason is why Nigerians say no is due to trust.
Okay,
If you don't have trust, you cannot go forward with any leader.
All right, well, thank you very much for this answers. Okay, we are now ready to take questions. Let's start from Tango, please. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. In history, in any war history, with my experience and understanding,
Louder.
with my experience, any war, in any war history, it never goes straight. A loser in any war has no history. What really happened in Nigeria is a long story. Gowon is taking that official blame. Even Gowon, people that give power to Gowon is Brutara, Aban, and Anka, those people that mastermind the coup. Hiroshi was planned to kill at Benin. They failed due to logistic support. People at 9 Brigade to move to Benin is far distance. Abeokuta. But when I was in the army, we saw everything open. People from Abeokuta to Benin to carry the operation, they feel Abeokuta to Ibadan is very close. It's people that are the hit squad moved from Abeokuta to Ibadan, that kill Hiroshi. And you know that time, I wasn't in army that time, though, but when I joined the army after the war, we saw everything. Even we some documents, but we are so stupid that not saving some documents. So when Hiroshi was killed, that time we don't have smart news. We don't have easy communication in army even that time. I'm thinking now we get in 2 weeks time, in 1 week's time. Thinking that wasn't easy. These people with their wisdom, even people in the north, somebody to get information from Lagos to Kano may take 2 weeks. And most of the signals at that time, you always go with motorcycle, or Land Rover. I'm coming later.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So what I'm saying that Gowon should not take blame for stopping Aburi. People that stop Aburi is British because they don't want to lose their big empire. But British are very expert in acting indirect rules. They use the northern areas and these people, those in government, knowing that they will lose their position. They're telling them, if Aburi accords, nobody blame Ojukwu. Ojukwu did that because when Ojukwu was alive, we discussed this in life to life. A minute, no voice. Ojukwu did the right thing by telling his brothers, this is my journey, this is what I get. And people were happy with him. So Gowon is not in control. Nobody should blame Gowon for that Aburi issue. Go started from British and people that will benefit from that issue. Finish.
Well, thank you. We allow even though they have addressed this issue before, we allow them to come back to that. Let's take the next question from Chief Emeka Agba, please. And then we take the response before we take the next 2 questions from Onebu and Marcel. Chief Emeka Agba, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. I just got called and I was asked to join the room. So what I want to ask is this. I want to know if this our meeting discussing about the cause of the Civil War, whether it has any way of, you know, going to help us to get solution to fix our present problem. Because I think dwelling in the past about who was right or who was wrong, since I've been listening to the guest speakers in this room, whether it was Gowon, that old man Gowon that was right, whether it was the late Biafra leader Ojukwu that was right or who was wrong. I think with what I'm seeing in Nigeria today, we need to be concerned about our present, our today, and our future. That's my, it's just a view of what I think should bother us so much at the moment. Because if we are saying what caused the Civil War, whether it was right or Ojukwu, I think we might be forgetting something that is very important. Because with the way Nigeria is today, with the way with the Igbos and the situation of this country today,
thank you.
I think we have to begin to discuss on things that is present instead of the past.
All right, thank you very much for your point. Let's hear from Dr. Ononuju, please, on the two issues that were raised.
Yes, I will say that I agree we should move forward and confront our today's problem. The issues have changed. What Nigeria has today is a Fulani problem. So that the people didn't understand it then is understandable. I put it down to lack of knowledge. Now that Nigeria has a Fulani problem, it has not changed. It was also a Fulani problem then. So now that we have this Fulani problem, and the whole of the ethnicities in Nigeria are now united, as you could see from the Southern Governors meeting in Asaba, and they all talked about, and that's why I'm very happy, because for the past 12 years, I have been doing on television what I call the Fulani monologue. And when you saw the governors in Asaba, they came to the same place, because I recognized in 2007 that the most security troubling problem we will have, and which I would call the most existential security challenge Nigeria will have, is the Fulani reaction to the consequences of democracy, which has now come. And as it has come, everybody in Nigeria has seen it. Every one of their post-Civil War allies have seen it. Why? The Fulani do not have numbers to survive a democracy which is primarily based on numbers. Don't forget, they came to Nigeria as a family, not as a nation. And today we are a democracy. They don't have the numbers. And even in the north, they killed the Hausa in Katsina, Zamfara, Sokoto, seeking ancestral lands to resettle Fulanis coming in from Mali, Central African Republic, and Cote d'Ivoire and other places. And now that what it is that made us Igbos to vote against Buhari has now been revealed to everybody through Buhari's incompetence in managing our diversity, I think that is what all of us should today focus our energy. Now that the Yoruba, the Igbira, the Kanuri, the Hausa, the TV, the Kaka, the Pansa, the Jukun, the Wurukum, the Birom, the people across the country are now united on one single platform, that the Fulani who are killing Nigerians for ancestral land are our real problem. I think that's what we should discuss. That's what we should come together. The Civil War is gone, because if you look at the Civil War, you will now look at the cascade of different ethnicities who that time were with the Fulani, but today are with us, in saying that the Fulani represents an existential threat to the life and sustained existence of people of other ethnicities. So we do not have in Nigeria any fundamental problem between the North and the South. No, there are no problem between the Muslims and Christians. No, what we have is the Fulani against all ethnicities. And that's why I am very happy that I'm beginning to see Igbo youths now join together with the Yorubas to protest against these things. I beg you, let us focus our attention on this crisis. If we do not solve the current Fulani problem we have in Nigeria, forget about the democracy. Because why? The violence you've seen they sponsor in the Northeast as Boko Haram, in the Northwest by the Fulani bandits, in the North Central and the Southwest as the Fulani militiamen, and the Old Eastern region as unknown gunmen, it will not go away. They are all targeted towards making sure that nobody shares any power with them. They are repeating the same mistakes they repeated in Central African Republic in 2010, in 2011, culminating in the reaction by those Africans in 2013. And I tell their leaders, I say, if you do the same thing in the same African society and setting, you will definitely get the same reaction. So I believe we should forget the past and come together, organize today for the current problem that we have as Nigerians. That's what I believe.
Thank you very much. Dr. Nwaezeigwe, what is your response or reaction to these issues now raised?
First, from Tango, I would like to tango him in what he said. The point is that one of the problems we had was the weakness of Gowon, and not just weakness. Gowon was very, very humane in his approach. It wasn't actually the power behind his throne that place. It was actually Akaha, Colonel John Akaha, that put him there against Murtala Mohammed, who wanted to take power. So right from time, Gowon had been struggling against the caliphate. So most of us, they don't know that, unless you are a deep historian, that you know that. Secondly, to my brother, Chief Emeka, no, it's impossible for you to forget about the past. The Fulani are able to maintain their control on Nigeria today because of their reliance on their history, on their past, the pride on their past, understanding their past. If you don't know your past, you will not know how to solve the problem of the future or your present problem. And then the future becomes a mirage for you. It's just like a carpenter drawing a nail into the wood. If the carpenter doesn't put the hammer backwards, he cannot develop the force to put the curtain back. We're looking at what caused our problem. What the problem we have today did not start with the Fulani estimate today. It did not start with Buhari. The problem has been in incubation, and we've been pretending as if we knew nothing about it. Right from the inception of Nigeria as a colonial entity, through Zik, as I stated earlier, most of the problems we have today were generated by Igbo leadership. From Zik, who did not understand the political dimension of the Fulani and thought that they were his best friend. Even Aburi also sold our own opportunity on throne because of his reliance on the Fulani. Then please, we should look back our history and look at it. And that is why this issue of Aburi Accord is very, very important. For how can we look at what is happening today? We are looking at what caused it. There must be cause and effect. There are causes. We are just experiencing the effects. For us to for you to say, oh, let us look about the effects. Let us look about the causes, and then just treat the effect. No. It is like a scalar quantity in what the French in physics. You think your thoughts and actions should have magnitude, and that means it must have direction as well. The present topic we are talking is very, very fundamental to the present issue. First is that Igbo leadership at that time, Ojukwu in particular, did not understand the intricacies of Fulani, of Fulani imperial plans, designs in Nigeria today. Look at immediately after the May 25th slaughter of the Igbo people, over May 15th slaughter of the Igbo people, over the 34 or whatever. He invited the Emir of Kano and then made him the removed Sikh and then made him the Chancellor of University of Nigeria then. Why they were killing your people? He never understood that. Even when he came back, let me tell you, even when he came back from exile, He never understood that these Fulani are not the best of friends of the Igbo people. He joined MPN in terms of ridiculing and then sold the Igbo people. And even up to today, your leaders, Oju Sokal who wants to be president, Peter Obi who wants to be president, and Umai who wants to be president, Hope we just open his state, who's on him, yet the roads are all scattered. Also, don't believe that these people see Igbo people as they have infiltrated hatred for Igbo people, and they continue going there. It is only by going back to our past that we inform our people that look at the situation and what happened before is still what is replaying today. The Yoruba never joined the program. The Middle Belt only joined the program for one reason, because the Hausa, because the Fulani people convinced them that look, they kill they kill your general Palmer or other people. And because again, remember, the team people were annoyed because Aguiros refused to release the team people, 35 team people locked up in prison by Ahmadu Bello.
All right, let's.
These were the reasons why they even revolted against it.
Let's focus.
Ordinarily, listen, no, let me conclude. Ordinarily, Gowon did not want to go to war against Igbo people. And that was why he took in 6 weeks after the declaration of Biafra, sending emissaries. He sent Awolowo and Marere, Chief Marere of Middle Solution to go and plead with Ojukwu. Gowon did not want to go to war, especially when besides he had an Igbo fear. He never wanted to go to war against Igbo. Let us not go into that. But until the Igbo of today look back and know the mistakes of their leaders, the solution of the present problem will be difficult to achieve.
All right, well, thank you very much. Let's take questions from Unebu and Marcel, please. Unebu first and then Marcel.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Elombah, thank you very much once again. First of all, in Nigerian history, the civil war is still on till as we are talking now. But the question I have, this topic is Aburi called, you said fast and figure. And you have asked both Nwaezeigwe and Ononuju, maybe 3 or 4 questions which I recall. The other one say fast, the other one say not true. So how now we that are listening, and when we go out, we came here to learn what we tell other people. And in so 3 or 4 different occasions, the other one say yes, the other one say no, true, and the other one say false. How do we go with it? When we go now, which one are we going to tell people out?
Okay, I will. We'll clarify this.
That's my question.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll put it to them. Let's hear from Marcel too. Marcel.
Thank you, Dan. Now, when people are saying forget your history, I just see them as being very naive. It's just like someone that wants to land in the Mars, and he's telling you to forget the lessons you learned trying to land in the moon and other places. You're going to take those lessons, inculcate them, arrange them very well, equip yourself properly, and go. So I am in fully support of we understanding our past and what caused whatever caused where we are today. Now, and that's where I am agreeing with Dr. Nwankwo or Professor Nwankwo. Sorry, I'm not sure of your system. The other part I disagree, because in most places, what I hear you say is you try to make excuses for Gowon and try to make excuses for some other people. Now, tomorrow, I wouldn't expect you to come here and tell me that what you are saying, that someone behind is pushing you to say it. Okay, you're going to be held accountable. So when you go into an agreement with someone, you are ultimately accountable. So Gowon is ultimately accountable with whatever agreement he has reached with his co-partners in the Aburi Accord. And if he has agreed to implement those agreements, he's ultimately accountable if he did not implement it. So let's not wave things around. Let's stand where it is. I hear people often say that the British are pushing them. And I ask, you are the president, okay? If someone is pushing you, you have a right to stand your ground and do what you're supposed to do. I look at India and Pakistan. We almost have the same issues with Nigeria and India and Pakistan. But Indian and Pakistani leadership had gone ahead, they fought their wars, and they separated. So you have India and Pakistan. and they're all moving fine. India is one of the best performing countries in the world in terms of technology and everything. So what I will want Oga Nwankwo to do, I need you to be very specific in answering some questions. When the questions were, was it the failure of the Aburi Accord that caused the war? Is a yes or no question. I have an agreement with you. You now came back and now think of going to renegotiate. Based on what? You should have just not come to that meeting. You should have first of all done your negotiation before coming to that meeting. And then I hear you say that Ojukwu doesn't have a right to announce what he came and the outcome. Hello, I came with my people, you came with your people. Any bilateral arrangement as which I have a right to announce to my people. I don't need to wait for you. Unless if you're telling me that was also part of the agreement that was written down. Okay, so let us hold Gowon accountable. And then I hear you say that the Aburi Accord is not implementable. I want to know the components of the Aburi Accord that is not implementable. Because if I understand very well, Nigeria had 4 regions before the incursion of the military, and the Aburi Accord was simply say, return to 4 regions. So I needed to know the components of the Aburi Accord that is not implementable. If you are bringing in other excuses of why one ethnic group doesn't want to be in another group, even in Nigeria as we stand today, I don't think some ethnic group wants to share the same thing with another ethnic group. But the state still stands. So we don't need to bring those emotions into it. Now, my last comment, I would want the participants to be very honest with us and let us trash key points that we all agree on, because people are going to walk away here with the history of what caused. I have read wide, so I'm expecting us to come and agree that this is what happened and not beat around the bush or try to make excuse for anybody. Thank you.
All right, before I go back to our discussants, let's be clear. Ndị be sere na onye na-amara ebe mmiri bidoro nwa bịa ama mgba ebe mmiri kwụsịkwara ma ọ bụ ama ife kọsịrị mmiri ozu ahụ. Biko na history is very, very, very important. You cannot come to Nigeria today and say, let us forget what happened in the past, let's face the future. No. We must understand. At the beginning of the discussion, I did a mea culpa. Some of us were born during the Civil War. Some of us were born after the Civil War. And importantly, it is those who were born after the Civil War are now shaking the table. They are not shaking the table. They are all having the IPOB, all have IPOB, all have ESN, all have MASOB, all have the. So they need to understand. We have to get that clear. And I think I agree with Marcel that our discussants, they are both historians. So they should not beat around the bush, give us direct answers to direct questions. So let me go back to them. You have heard what the questioner said. Can you respond to those issues before we go back to take further questions from our listeners? Okay, Dr. Nwaezeigwe first. Please let us restrict your answers to now maybe 3 minutes, because you see a lot of hands. 2 minutes.
I recognize Marcel's sentiments, but in history, you don't answer scientifically. As I said, you don't look at the peripheral. You don't look at, Gowon was not alone. If you are telling me being sympathetic, it's not a question of giving the excuse. And I've given you an instance. For instance, they said there should be military commands at each independent military government, commands. And they discovered that the West had no army. Western region had no army. The only soldiers they have were technicians and then clerks in the army. And then it was decided in Aburi that they should now start crash program on how to recruit people in the West. And that was why when the West now came and said the army of occupation in Lagos should now go. They then go on and said there should be Lagos garrison should be created, which should now be in charge of the head of state. So it will not be possible for them. And again, you are talking of Ojukwu. Go and return and consulted and called his permanent secretary and advisor to look at the agreement. Ojukwu did not consult anybody. It's against Igbo tradition. What Ojukwu came on 5th, the Aburi Accord was on 4th and 5th, and he came on 6th and gave a press conference. There was no consultation with people around, as Gowon did. It's not Igbo tradition at all.
No. Sorry, Dr. Nwaezeigwe, let us, excuse me. Dr. Nwaezeigwe, you know why I love Dr. Nwaezeigwe, you know why I loved your initial presentation. You gave us the 6 points agreed at Aburi. Very explicit. We all had it. And now the question is, why wasn't those agreements implemented? Okay. You also gave us your opinions as to why they were not implemented. The next question is, did the failure to implement the Aburi Accord lead to Nigeria's civil war? Let us get these facts clear, because a lot of us are going away from this discussion with some lessons learned. I don't know whether I've made my point. So thank you very much. Do you wish to conclude, or do we go to...
No, let me conclude. No, yeah, on this, your last topic. As I said, it's not a question of yes or no. I'm a professional historian. As I said, there are many multifarious factors that decide an event, not just one factor. And secondly, the issue of whether Aburi, the refusal to address Aburi caused the civil war, can also be because there are, if Ojukwu had wanted to manage the misimplementation, it's misimplementation of Abuja, of Aburi. It should have prevented the civil war too, because the Aburi was not the direct consequences of the civil war.
So you are blaming...
Yes.
All right. Okay.
No.
Okay. We thank you. It's all right. No. We thank you. Let's hear from
you. No.
What is the reason for the civil war?
Hello. Let us hear from Dr. Ononuju before we take other comment from the people in the audience, please. Just 2 minutes, Dr. Ononuju. What do you have to say with what is coming up from our listeners now, please?
Of course, the listeners are very correct. I agree with them. Gowon was wrong. It's not for us to come here and defend him. He was wrong. If you say he was weak, that means he misrepresented himself in Aburi. He attended Aburi and he was recognized for the claims he made that he is the head of the Nigerian government. And that meant anything that was agreed in Aburi, he could implement. So when he came back and he didn't implement it, that's why I told you, you cannot start blaming any permanent secretary or anything. Those were all the scam and fraud they do to try to pan away responsibility. Gowon was wrong, 100% wrong. I told him that 2 months ago when we met. I said, you're wrong. And because of your bad decisions, look at your people are now under attack. The Fulani are trying to overrun your place. 58 plateau villages, people from them are in IDP camps. And Gowon cannot say a thing. Can you imagine that? So that's why I think probably even today, Buhari is a bonanza of sorts. Why? His incompetence has forced all of us now to understand the foolishness of decisions that some of us took in the 60s. So yes, Gowon was wrong, and I say that emphatically. No, nothing has to do with any permanent secretary. The buck stops at the table of the head of state. Gowon. You're supposed to implement the Aburi Accord that you signed on to, not to come here and start seeking for renegotiations. He is wrong 100%. Secondly, we should have history. History should be taught. I'm happy you're saying I learned Nigerian history on my own when I saw the Fulanis have set purpose towards removing it, because they know if history is properly taught, we will know that they are not indigenous to Nigeria. So there's a lot of things that happen for which the Fulanis remove history from our school curriculum. I fight that it be brought back, that a man who doesn't know his history may be told tomorrow that Gowon who took decision is not to be blamed. No, he is to be blamed. He took responsibility in Accra. He is head of, can he implement it? Yes, who can implement? And they put him there. So why will he come back and say you don't blame him? You blame Gowon. That's what you blame. So, and that's the way I see it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let us hear from Nwankwo and the Nwaezeigwe, please. And then there are so many hands, please. Okay, Nwankwo, please. Let's hear from you, and then we hear from Nwaezeigwe. Okay.
Thank you, Mazi Elombah, for giving me an opportunity to contribute. If you do not revisit your history becomes your present. But also, when you look at your history, you have to read in between the lines, watch in between the pixels, and listen in between the decibels. Insight is not a common commodity. The problem of Nigeria started with Nnamdi Azikiwe. He had a lot of baggage, and he was white-mailed by the British into accepting Fulani hegemony. We have present-day Nnamdi Azikiwes as our governors, who kowtow to the Fulanis for their own personal gain and aggrandizement. We have to confront these individuals. And there are ways of effecting a change of government. What I see with my people is that they vote for the wrong person after getting a cup of rice. The individual goes into office and steals a trailer load of rice for the 1 cup he gave an individual. So multiply that by the population. So until we begin to rethink and also remember that heroes have flaws. Jefferson owned slaves. George Washington owned slaves. I won't be surprised sometime in the future, some of their status will be removed. Okay, I'm sure, I'm not sure, but if you meet God and ask him, did he make a mistake creating us? He may say, man, I could have made a mistake. I don't like what's going on here. So Ojukwu made errors. Look at it. We claim to be very intelligent. The Igbos, we have a megalomaniac tendency. The South Sudanese fought the whole Arab world for 30 years and got their independence because they did not declare a nation in Sudan. It was more of a guerrilla war. If you fight a guerrilla war, nobody knows where you are. You don't dig trenches with somebody with armored cars, Saladin and Saracens, and start fighting in frontal battle when you have den guns. There were mistakes made, and if we don't revisit those mistakes, we're going to make them again. And finally, we are docile, gullible, malleable, and compromisable. The Fulanis can do what they're doing in Nigeria, in Senegal, in Gambia, in Ghana. They tried it in Mali. The Dogons and the Bambara fought them. They tried in Central African Republic. So we have to, and remember, if we don't do that, the whole Nigeria will become an emirate. We have an emir of Aba, emir of Onitsha, because the Fulanis don't want to coexist peacefully with anybody. Okay, and the greatest problem we have is that of leadership. No leader is perfect. You have, so long as it's more than 60% or maybe 50% good, go with it. And before I forget, Gowon is the cause of the Civil War. Babafemi Ogundipe could not stand the heat in the kitchen, and he ran to London as High Commissioner. Gowon pretended to be head of state. Once you're head of state, the buck stops at your desk. And the man was so naive, I don't want to insult him, but he was so naive and inexperienced that in 75 or thereabouts, he said that Nigeria had so much money that Nigeria didn't know what to do with the money. And he was paying salaries for countries in the Caribbean. Show me where Gowon built power stations, solar power stations, nuclear, whatever. We still have 4,000 megawatts. So the guy is now praying to change Nigeria. Assuming we had a Fulani take over head of state, they wouldn't do what Gowon did, because now we know who is doing it. But if they could go behind a stooge, they will wash their hands off of it. The stooge did it. Wow. So please, not only do we teach history, we need to tell people the implication of history, because every one of us thinks that they are smart as everybody else. No, everyone is not endowed similarly. That's why we need leaders. And when you get a leader like Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, he has some flaws. We have to support him. If you want to form your own, don't fight the other groups. I end my case.
Thank you very much. Let's listen to Nwaezeigwe, please, before we go back to Dr. Ononuju and Dr. Nwaezeigwe. You can unmute yourself.
So thank you very much, Dan, for having me here. I've been laughing my head off when Katch Ononuju made some categorical statement. And but if I come to the my submission this evening, I want to start off where Marcel stopped. And he said something in the chat forum here. He said, if we rephrase this question, which is, if Gowon had implemented the agreement, would Ojukwu ever have declared war? Or would the Eastern Assembly...
Ojukwu did not declare war because Ojukwu...
No, okay, hold on. No, sorry. I rephrase. Okay, would the Eastern Assembly ever declared Biafra?
Good.
Not war. My mistake. I take that back. Would the Eastern Assembly ever declared Biafra, the Republic of Biafra then? The answer is very obvious. Then it leads me to this point. What we saw in 1966-67 is nothing different from what is happening in the present Nigeria, where leaders do not take their positions serious. You tell me that someone left Nigeria, flew into Ghana, in Aburi, to have a meeting with you. Come in there, sit down, and somebody who came in prepared and made a presentation, adult, you left, you went home. You said, oh, he came prepared. We didn't know it was going to be this. Oh, he didn't know. Now, look at the people in government today. When they go on meetings, the last time they were in Germany, we saw pictures. All of them sat on the table. The Germans had their pens and papers ready to do something. What we saw them doing is some of them hustle for the teas and coffees that were on the table. And here you are, a leader said, oh, we can amend, you shouldn't have announced whatever. What did you go to Aburi to do if it was not that you went in there to agree on something? You went in Aburi, you agreed on something, you came back and you told me, oh, why didn't you go with those people you know that would have influenced it, that would have been trashed out at once? What stops you when you know that this thing was no longer visible? What effort did you make to reach out again, say, okay, sorry, point A and point B, can we re-agree on it? And that is the same thing that we see today. That is the reason why you will have a man who went around Nigeria campaigning that if my party wins, we will give you restructuring and put it in the freaking manifesto. They win an election. Oh, anyone who talks about restructuring is enemy of the Nigerian state. Tell me how that is different from what you had in 1967. Give me a break, because again, at the end of the day, like Katch Ononuju said, I agree with him without apology. Gowon sadly cost the loss of millions of people. There was no way they could have declared the Republic of Biafra if you had agreed. As Dr. Nwankwo had enumerated there, the things that were in there are very simple. Keep return to the regions, keep peace. If when we went back, people stopped dying, there was no program. Whoever killed another Nigeria, be it in the eastern Nigeria that they killed a northerner, prosecute them. In the north, if somebody killed someone else, prosecute them. Today is the same problem, that things are happening. Nobody. You see a bunch of people marauding into your country and they kill people. Oh, the police arrest them and they get released. And you want to have a nation. We are basically seeing a repeat of 1966, 1967 happening before our own very eye. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Nwaezeigwe. Dr. Ononuju, we come back to you. Obviously, the failure to implement the Aburi Accord from the consensus seemed to have led to the Nigeria civil war. What do you think in your mind? Because like we said, history teaches us the present and dictates the future. What do you think Ojukwu will have done differently? Because one of the discussants seem to be blaming Ojukwu. So let's put it to you, because both of you are discussing. What do you think Ojukwu would have done differently when he saw that maybe the Aburi Accord would have, it's not going accord? Do you agree with Nwaezeigwe that they would have maybe started to renegotiate some points, or was he right to insist on Aburi we stand?
I don't think Ojukwu insisted on Aburi we stand. Ojukwu was simply living to the truth about an Igbo man. Once you have an agreement with an Igbo man, he takes it as that. If you go against it, he will no more honor any dealings with you. It's not Ojukwu's making. It is in our DNA. That's who we are. That's why you see the Omonade institution is built around trust. Once you say it, Omonade hear it, Omonade act as witnesses. That's why you see in the East, when land is bought, Omonade are used for the one. They are seen as witnesses. So once the Igbo man, this is our worldview. The minute you have an agreement with an Igbo and you keep to it, everything is fine. But it is not so with the Fulani. The Fulani have a history that is built on the Polaku, the way we Igbos have our omenala of, the Omonade system, and then Anehishimoke also. That means age, the Omonade, and that equity that we always call in the Fulani life. There is the Polaku. Inside the Polaku, there is the Takia. And then they forever don't do anything that is honest. As you've seen, the Hausa man has an honest Bakomi life. He accepts, and he's very, very giving. The Hausas are very, very honest in Africa. And that was why the Fulani were able to play them with their deceit. And today, look at it. Hausas are not only the poorest people in the world. Hausa land is home to humanity's largest concentration of children without access to formal education than anywhere else in the world. So we cannot listen and succumb to the Fulani the way the Hausas have succumbed to them. And that's the fundamental problem Nigeria seems to have today. The Fulani's application of Takia in everyday dealing, deceit, has now caught up with them that, as Nwaezeigwe rightly pointed out, it is in their life. They will make promise to you, tomorrow they will go against it. Buhari talked about in paragraph 2 of the APC's manifesto was restructuring. Today, he said, no, I did not say restructuring. And he feels comfortable to move on. And then when we talked about him taking land, he said, no, these are Libyans. In short, another one, he said their compatriots led to live peacefully with them. When I made my groundbreaking revelation on television that these people are from Mali, I met them and I spoke Hausa to them, they could not. But when I spoke French, they listened and they retorted. And as we continued speaking, I found they were from Mali. Most people said I was not being honest, but being an Igbo man, I stood on what it was. It took 3-4 years for Nigerians to now see everything is true. So the Fulani man's life is built on deceit. Ours is that way, and we move on. So those were the two clashes we saw. As Gowon went there, believing to be a normal African, is a gentleman, I agree. But then, gentlemen don't make the thing go unless he acts. You know, what you tell to an Igbo man is different from your actions to him. When you act and he sees that you're not trustworthy, he won't trust you. So it wasn't say Ojukwu did. No, it is who we are. We were being killed and we couldn't trust those who were killing us. And when we had an agreement with them in Ghana, we came back, implement the agreement. These are people just running away from being killed. And you now want to start changing it. There is no way a man who has seen 2, 3, 4, 5 of his cousins, brothers, and relatives die, still believe the word of a man who said, okay, I want to make peace. We said, okay, fine, let's shake hands. We shake hands. Then we come back And the man walks back and there's something shining at his back and it's a knife. He said, my friend, bring that back. You can't take a knife to that side. He said, no. And let me just give the small one. Once you break those agreements, you break trust. If the biggest logistics in leadership is trust. If the people cannot trust you, they will never do anything you say. And that's when, if you cannot trust this leader, who have seen that our people have been killed in the north, they came back, and then we now went for a negotiation, and they said, he is the leader, whatever he says he will do. And then we trusted those words with General Ankara. And then we came back here, and the man went back to the same old way, the same old deceit that our people have known the Fulani to be with. So when we say, okay, this is the voice of Esau, but the hand is dealing with us is the hand of someone else. And that was why we said no. So it is wrong to blame Ojukwu. Ojukwu was simply boxed into a corner, and then the rest, they say, is history. And as I said, what you saw in that 60s is exactly what you're seeing right now.
All right.
But the way it is being shown now, it's not just us, the Igbos, seeing it. It is the whole of Nigeria's ethnicities seeing it. And that's where today is better than yesterday.
Thank
because
you.
Now
you still have more opportunity to this, because I'm sure the coming questions will allow you to make further expositions on this point. Dr. Ononuju, please. Let's ask Dr. Nwaezeigwe, what lessons should we take from the events and the aftermath and the fallout from the failure to observe the agreements in Aburi or otherwise? What lessons should we take from that?
See, before I look at that lesson, I want to re-emphasize my position on that Aburi Accord. It was minutes of a meeting of Executive Council. You see, like Mr. Ezeoke said and other people, they are taught based on their shallow knowledge of the content of that agreement. Because if they actually know, Aburi Accord was not just one day. On 15th and 16th, the Solicitor Generals of the four regions met in Benin to look at it. By end of March, they moved again back to Abuja, back to Aburi on a second Aburi meeting to discuss it. So it was not like after that meeting, everything ended. They continued discussing it. So within that interim, there have been ways of solving the problem amicably. And it's not a question of telling me yes or no. As a history teacher, as a history lecturer in the university, ask my students, Obasanjo was the reason why Murtala was, was killed, yes or no? And if my student answers yes or no, I fail him straight away because he doesn't know what to say. He has to explain the yes or the no in details. That is historical studies for you. So it's not a question of telling me, if you are talking of implementation, there were other areas were implemented. The only area was that, remember, Agri-Ronsi abolished regionalism and removed federal from the government and just this group of provinces from federal group of provinces. Gowon came back and said he's returning, he returned back the decree instituting Federal Republic of Nigeria. That was one. And when he returned Nigeria, he abrogated that group of provinces and turned it to Federal Republic of Nigeria. Ojukwu did not like it. The second one, he said, oh, that idea of the council determining the control of the military, that he will not accept that. As head of state, he should be the commander. In fact, he said he should be the supreme commander. So Ojukwu rejected that he cannot be supreme commander, but commander-in-chief. That was the problem. And the same commander-in-chief is what they are bearing up to this moment. You understand? So other areas were implemented, and Solicitor Generals of the whole state were meeting. So the issue of just looking at that Aburi meeting of 5th and 6th as the only reason why it wasn't true. Because the four regions continued meeting, trying how to solve the problem until the break of the Civil War on 30th May. So we must understand that. But talking about the lessons we should learn, it's not a question of the non-implementation, part implementation of the Aburi Accord, because the it wasn't totally implemented. Some were actually implemented because there were regional commands of the army. The Midwest had their command under the control of Lieutenant Colonel Nwankwo. The West had their command under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Obasanjo, assisted by Lieutenant Colonel Bajowa. The North also have their own. They did not have their complication with Akaya in command. And that was why the West said they should forget Abeokuta and Lagos and move to Jeba. And they moved to Jeba and stayed until the outbreak of the Civil War. Remember, on the Biafran invasion of Midwest in 1968, that those people in control of Midwest region were the Midwest indigenes. They were the Midwest indigenes, which means that aspect of Aburi Accord, talking about regional control of the army, was already in existence at that time. So it wasn't like the whole Abuja, the whole Aburi Accord was not implemented. A few, number one, that Ojukwu rejected. In spite of that, all the law officers of the four regions continue to meet. The major lesson we should learn is presently is that we should not just look at the trivialities of the situation. Even in taking cognizance, even in taking a laudable or a fundamental decision, we must look at the feelings of other people. As I stated earlier, in designing the Abuja Accord, those people who started there did not look at the political accident, the political antecedents prior to that crisis, especially when you are talking of the agitation of the Middle Belt for their liberation from the Northern oligarchy, which led to TV riots that lasted from,
from
1980 to 1960. You should talk about the Okrika riots and the minorities in the East agitating. These were the factors that actually led to the collapse to the immediate collapse of the Aburi Accord, because these people protested, and if they protested to Gowon had no authority to impose an authority over them, because at that time they were vibrant in the zone.
Well, thank you very much. Let's thank you very much. Sorry for my interjection. We'll take further questions, but let me quickly add.
As if we are journalists or whatever, or we are physicists defining NECON what is Matthew's theory.
Thank you. We thank you very much. I will have gone back to. We'll move on now because our time is almost coming to an end. But I will have moved. Another thing I will have asked about facts, fiction about Aburi Accord was Ojukwu, in one of his writings, explained that yes, it was agreed that I will allow Gowon to address the nation on the agreement reached at Aburi. But then we came home, 24 hours passed, Gowon wasn't talking. 48 hours passed, Gowon wasn't talking. 72 hours, they are still having meeting. Ojukwu now said no. He now went and addressed the press conference and told the world these are the agreements we reached at Aburi. But let's leave that.
It was wrong. But that was a lie on the part of Ojukwu. Ojukwu addressed the press conference on 6th of January, 1967.
And they came back on.
Yes, I have the record. 6th of January.
No. I said, okay, sorry. I may be, wait. I may be wrong.
Yeah,
wait. Dr. Nwaezeigwe, wait. Can you just come? Wait, please.
So it was
wait now. Just wait. Just wait. Maybe because all of us are learning. What was the date of the Aburi Agreement? Direct question.
Aburi Agreement, 2 days. 4th
what was the date? Yeah?
4th. And Nise
of
January, of January. 4th and 5th.
Okay, wait. Okay, on what date did the Ojukwu address the press conference announcing?
On 6th January. 6th January. Just a day after.
A day after.
Yes, the meeting ended 5th. Then they slept. On 6th they returned. As soon as he landed at Enugu Airport, got to his government house, he addressed the press conference.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Let's hear from Lord Swish and then Azo Ikejiani, please. Meanwhile, we will conclude this segment in the next 10 minutes. Then we move to the next segment we normally have after this type of interviews. Lord Swish, please, can you unmute yourself? And then Azo to follow immediately. Lord Street, unmute yourself, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, who is speaking? Is that Azu speaking
Yeah.
first? Or?
Yeah, good evening once again.
Okay.
I first commend all the participants again, and more especially Dr. Katch Ononuju, who have been following for the past 2 or 3 years. He has been vocal in most of the local TV here. Been vocal in most of the, has not been debated for his own positions and submission. Quite just like what is happening tonight again. But in addition, I think I'm quite satisfied with about the immediate past submission made by our brothers and Marcel, Ezoka, and the rest of them, including that of Katch Ononuju. The question is simple: fictions or facts? What are the causes and the lesson learned with the solution ahead? Which I've learned a lot from the past previous speakers. Both their submissions, including that of Dr. Katch Ononuju, has laid a very good foundation. Denial, frustrations, deceit, and most of all these regulars, whatever you can talk about it. In our ramifications, this has actually summarized what you wanted to know. We are having issues like the manner of which Dr. Nwankwo is taking this shape to. You can't probate at the same time, reprobate in the same court. Initially, I've taken your submission quite exclusive and simple. When you said that these actions initially were designed to fail, even before they went on that agreement. How come along the line you deviated from the earlier submission that you made, saying that Ojukwu was the cause? However, it's not what I'm trying to do. I've learned for whatever I want to learn. I just want to thank compliment most of the people I've spoken so far. I think my own question now is this: what are the way forward? Looking at the pending doom, the forthcoming issues that is ahead of us today. The same story is repeating itself, right? Each and every one of us can acknowledge that we've not gone beyond the same 1967, 1968, 1970 world. The same thing is still looming. I've learned my own lesson from the earlier submission, but ahead of us now, with what we have at hand, I think that's part of the real issue at hand now, why this thing is very important. History, you cannot press forward without the past tense. So what are the going forward? What do we learn, and the manner with which we can approach the forthcoming world, of which you've seen it. The same deceit is still going on. The same systematic approach. Nothing has ever changed. It's still the same thing. The same system designed to fail. The same thing is still applicable. So what can we do about that? Thank you so much. Dr. Katch Ononuju, I still have. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lord Bishop Biafra, for your succinct submissions. Also, please, Mr. Ikejian.
Dr. Nwaezeigwe, I quite disagree with what you just placed on this forum. I knew Ojukwu from 5th Battalion Kano. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, he went to Katsina to save my parents from being killed. At that time, I was born in Kano. I speak Hausa. Ojukwu understands very well the Fulani motive. I'm not going to kill you. He was quite educated when they went to that meeting in Aburi. And he went with people too on his side. They studied it and they presented it. It was agreed upon. So on Gowon coming back to Nigeria, they used that Aburi agreement as a bait to the Yorubas. Do you understand me now? It was a bait to buy the Yorubas over. So for you to say Ojukwu was wrong in presenting to the people that he was trying to meet with in the house is very, very wrong. That man is right. By the way, the Northerners started killing Igbos in 1953, if you don't know the history. In 1953, there was a riot in Kano in which so many Southerners were killed, slaughtered. I came back in 1966 with my parents. I went to school in Kafanchan. So I'm well aware, and I fought in the Biafran army, to tell you the truth, at an underage. I went to Ikeranzizi, I went to Umaya, Eket, then Opobo. So I'm well versed with that war. Nobody will show me what war is. But going to war a second time would be a very grievous mistake. That's all I have to tell you. History, yes, history can be written both ways. You can write it to suit or not to suit. That's your prerogative. Thank you.
Thank you, very much, Mazi. Let's allow Dr. who spoke like let's allow Dr. Ononuju and Dr. Nwaezeigwe to respond before we take further presentations. And please, we will finish that in 5 minutes and then go to the next segment because something terrible is happening in Igbo land. We'll have that a 30-minute discussion starting from 10 p.m. So we'll conclude this segment by 10 p.m. Dr. Ononuju, please, can you please just summarize what you think, everything we've discussed today with the last presentations, and make your concluding comments? Dr. Ononuju, please. I hope you're still with us. I think he left. Okay, he's here. Doc, can you unmute yourself? You are muted.
Thank you very much. I have unmuted. I want to advise our people that they should start making friends with everybody who is not a Fulani. From the Hausa man to the TV man, those who are with Yorubas, deepen your friendship with the Yorubas, especially the Yorubas of the Owena stock. The Owena stock are those of Ikiti, Oshun, Ondo. They are forthcoming. They understand this crisis, and they are willing to partner with us. Befriend even the TV, befriend the Doma, befriend the Igede, the Agatu. Be nice to the Kanuri man you know. The problem today in Nigeria is not the North, it's not the Muslim, it is the Fulani. The Fulani are actually killing more Hausas than they are killing Igbos. They are killing more TV than they are killing Igbos. They are killing more Bachama than they are killing Igbos. They are killing people all over for one reason. They want to seize ancestral land. So I want to, even in your village, make friends with your neighbor, make friends with your brother. Come back, support Ohaneze. Be friendly even to your governor. Most of them are challenged, but because of the preponderance of pressure from the Igbo streets, they are now politely trying to get themselves back. Because when it starts, it's the rain at home that will beat you. It's not the one in Meduguri. I want our people to, like I said, other time when we had an Igbo Zoom town hall meeting, start making peace with everybody you know. You can let Igbos as much as possible attend the Washington rally on the 10th, the 12th, and 16th to show the Yoruba solidarity. Start it now. Once we achieve that Southern unity, as was demonstrated by Asaba, then we will be able to save our country and save sub-Saharan Africa. There is a sub-regional onslaught of the Fulani against everybody in the sub-region. Whether you're Dogon in Mali, whether you are in Cote d'Ivoire, whether you are in Cameroon, you're Central African Republic, you are in Nigeria, the Fulani are against you. The only way you can win is when you unite. You saw the things that happened in Yoruba land. The minute the Yorubas came behind Sunday Igboho, the Fulani went back. But of course, the Fulani have a way to sustain their audacious offenses. This is who they are. This is what they have done all their life. The difference between now and the past is that today we have the greatest number of awareness in Nigeria's history. We have never achieved this quality of awareness before. Forgive those who erred against us before. Forgive and befriend the Yoruba. Forgive and start making friends with your Izon brother.
Thank you.
Today, the problem has changed. The new enemy is the Fulani, not the Hausa. So we must make it distinct of not attacking all nationals anyway with in Igbo land when there's a problem. The problem is Fulani. Fulani. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I admire your erudition and courage. I've watched some of your presentations in Nigerian television as well and cannot help but marvel at the way you always courageously put these points across. Thank you for being with us tonight. Right, Dr. Nwaezeigwe, what would be your
Thank you for having me.
Final summation of today's proceedings?
First of all, for the Igbo to move forward, ideologically and patriotically. We must separate historical facts from what I term Okonkone mentality, which is what most of the people believe. Propaganda without layers of facts. Most of the ideas they know about, Aburi are not rooted in history. They are based on propaganda. So we must go back, read the minutes of the meeting, read the minutes of the implementation committees, which even passed on, and know the reasons. And at the point where each other broke away, it's not a question of, oh, on Aburi we stand, and Ojukwu did this, and Ojukwu did this. No, our people did this. That is vile propaganda. And as long as people continue to live, to rely on propaganda, there will be no movement. For example, somebody is telling me, I said, somebody said that I said that the agreement was bound to fail initially. He didn't even hear me, which means, which means he wasn't literate enough to listen to me appropriately. I was quoting Ruth First, a historian of Nigerian Civil War. That was his statement, and I quoted him, not my statement. And now saying that, oh, I said it, and I'm saying this way. That is not how to analyze matters. Secondly, the man mentioned Ojukwu. I grew up in the north. I was there in the Civil War. My hometown was a war battle. My uncles, my senior brothers were all in Biafra. They fought Biafra. So nobody, I was a kid, 7 years, 8 years, 68, 8 years, 69, 9 years during the Civil War. So I participated in the Civil War. My town was a battleground. So it wasn't a case of my being strained to Nigerian Civil War. I was part of the Biafra struggle, my family, my town, and everywhere at that time. And my father escaped the pogrom in Bauchi State during the Civil War. So we knew everything. I was part of it. And for somebody to come here and tell me Ojukwu is an idea, it's being sentimental. Ojukwu, as far as I'm concerned, was part of the problem we see, even with the present leadership. Part of the problem is not even the Fulani. Because as he was saying, it is a right in the book that tells one that there is fish in the basket. If we don't have proactive leaders, just as the Yorubas have, the Fulani will continue to have a free ride on us. So the issue is not Fulani. I'm in a struggle, and I know how. Even the president of Hanese is preaching. It's a dolent one. It's a dolent one. It's rudderless. They don't have. It's not because they're trying to pretending to be proactive because of the rising crisis in the state. But they also aided the situation to degenerate to this point. Because right from time, they've been playing alliance to Fulani. Because first of all, the Igbo mentality, until Igbo believe that the Fulani would never give him political power, until Igbo believe that the Fulani is his #1 enemy, based on ethnic definition and based on religious differences, this nation, the Igbo will never get liberation. But as long as some of these people, especially Ohanese, the Professor Obiozo, who I've known since 1991, when we were in Senegal for a conference, when we were the Director General of Nigeria International Affairs, he has been an apologetic of Fulani, and I've been their spokesman on World Igbo Conference. I've been their spokesman on World Igbo Conference before I went on it. So I know all of them. They are not proactive Igbo leaders, and they cannot bring solution to the problem. And that is why it is just matters are generating seriously. But we come out and say, look, these are the problems of our former leaders. Adiros made mistake. If Arjuna made mistake, because if Irosi was killed, Obara was killed, there shouldn't have been anything for pogrom. But they kept quiet. They slaughtered us, they did it. But we laid the foundation. Some who carried his own plan fully in the north, and then coming to south, they were given excuse. Archbishop Maros was there. What has Archbishop? Did they send it to kill him? If the person who wanted to kill Obara, you saved Obara, you saved Zik, they live up to 80s and 90s. What did they achieve? That is on the top of the blood of the fellow people. So until our people decide, look, if I'm going for a coup and my mother is among those to be killed, if I don't participate, I will remove my face. Let another person go. But until the command fails to be sentimental in actions.
Thank you very much.
let us agree.
We will have this conversation. Thank you very much, Dr. Nwaezeigwe.
Problems to be solved, even while the Abuja, while the initial agreement was not adhered to, because the
thank you.
Solicitor General continued to meet. Finally, remember, there was Federal Executive Council in Benin, which Ojukwu said he will not attend in Lagos, and they brought it up in Benin. So they saw this Ojukwu's disagreement on Aburi. They met. Ojukwu refused to come for the fear that he will be arrested in Benin. After the meeting, Ojukwu flew with a helicopter to Ejo for Ejo to brief him on the meeting. It wasn't like immediately the Abuja, the Aburi Accord of 5th or 4th and 5th, everything collapsed. They continue managing the situation, discussing it. So people should go back and look at the trends of the meetings, the progress of the meeting between Aburi, that Aburi of 455, of 4th and 5th, and Aburi of May 30th, of March 30th, and 31st, second Aburi, where they now went, to look at the issues of this agreement. People should look at the minutes and look at if between this area there should be need for the civil war, or if there should have been compromises. Is part of the mistakes in the initial implementation of number one on the agenda, that of federalism, which that of federalism and announced by Gowon, and that of arrogating to himself the head of the military government. And that was only the problem. Of all other aspects, all other 5 were resolved. Until people go and read deeper historically, not coming from the surface and then maybe challenging a professional historian who read deeply and is giving you the details, and coming here to give me peripheral ideas and telling me cock and bull story. We never move forward. Thank you very much. Let me stop here for the meantime. You are muted yet. I'm not hearing you. I'm not hearing you.
Hello. The volume is just like is now working. Dan, you will need to use your control something there to adjust. Hello. Can you all hear me at all? Hello, Dan.
Are you hearing me?
I can hear you now. What did you do with the volume?
I don't know. Sometimes, this internet. Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Just
okay.
a quick.
Sorry, sorry, Otum, but we'll continue the second segment of the discussion so that we'll allow our guests to.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
Dr. Katch Ononuju, thank you very much for being with us tonight. You have shed a lot of light on some of the events surrounding the Aburi Accord and the possibilities. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And Dr. Nwaezeigwe, thank you very much, eminent historian of repute. Thank you very much also for laying the historical analysis of the events surrounding the Aburi Accord. Thank you, Dr. Nwaezeigwe.